Don't get the volume.
Morning, PS.
I can hear you, but I'm looking at the excursion. I don't hear the volume. Okay, can we get sound? Well, Honorable President of the CPA sub-branch, Honorable Speaker of the Province of the Eastern Cape, delegations that have been invited here, esteemed guests and visitors, our Deputy Commissioner, the Deputy Speaker, National, and our honored visitors that have connected virtually in this platform, our stakeholders, as well as other leaders, members of the Provincial Legislature and the sector, which is the entire legislative sector of the country, that's then invited, honorable members, visitors, members of the media. I want to suggest that we have to start with our meeting. I was waiting for the voice to be attended to when it comes to the excursion part of the program, but I can see that it is difficult for now. But during the course of the program, we will have an opportunity to walk you through the province of the Eastern Cape, its beauty, and what is it that we're able to offer when it comes to tourism products and the development that are taking place in this province. The program has been shown here, and I think we are going to be received and be welcomed welcomed by the remarks by the President of the CPA, who is the Speaker of the Province of the Legislature. And immediately thereafter, we shall have Honorable Chairperson of Committee of Chairpersons, Honorable Nkopana, just to make the introduction of the panelists that are here. And Dr. Snow will be introducing the main topic, which I think is sharing the best practices and lessons in reducing the environmental impact of industries and transportation. And that will be done by our Deputy High Commissioner. And then Professor Snow will be introducing the main topic, which is tackling climate change and its effects to the environment and humankind. I will proceed indicating what is going to happen, but bravo Africa, good morning Africa, and happy birthday to our continent, sons and daughters, and beautiful people of this continent. On that note, I think, Honorable President, we are almost on time. We timed you to take the podium at immediately 9:45. We are at 9:43, and I can see you are almost ready, leadership. Then I will now invite you to take the podium and address this webinar Celebration Africa Day 2022 under this Commonwealth Parliamentary Association program, which is hosted by the province of the Eastern Cape. I think with that understanding, let me invite the audience to welcome you to address this Africa Day. Over to you, ma'am, and do what you know best to welcome your guests and visitors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairperson of the session and also Chairperson of the CPA sub-branch in the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature, our Deputy Speaker. What a glorious day it is indeed in the Eastern Cape, and where I'm sitting here in Kariga with the sun shining. But we know other areas are not as privileged as we are. And we do have a immense task ahead of us in dealing with the issues of climate change. Firstly, let me acknowledge some of our guests who will be at the correct time. They will be introduced correctly, but I think let's start with Professor Bernie Snow from the University of Strathclyde. I hope I pronounce it correctly, in the UK, an associate professor at NMU. Professor Zondi from the Department of Public and International Studies at UJ, Deputy Ambassador Beatrice Karago from Kenya High Commission, the Deputy Ambassador Oyango from the Uganda High Commission, Mr. Joss Reed, Consul General from the UK Embassy, Mr. Abdul Olatunyi, Secretary General, the Community of Nations in South Africa, the Deputy Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, Ms. Maggie Sochu, members of the Provincial Legislature, members from the House of Traditional Leaders, our Deputy Speaker from the National Parliament, Honorable Tsenoli, all our guests that have joined us here today, the guests from the institutions of higher learning in the Eastern Cape, our media. You are most welcome here on this day as we celebrate Africa Day. But I think before we go into it, we must also acknowledge that as Africa, we still have a problem whilst we are addressing the issues of climate change, that the scourge of gender-based violence is prevalent within Africa and within South Africa, and we are feeling and experiencing the effects thereof in the Eastern Cape. Program Director, it is my pleasure to welcome all delegates attending this Africa Day webinar under the theme Tackling Climate Change and its Effects to the Humankind and the Environment. The executive of the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature, our sub-branch of the CPA, is proud to be part of the forum of people and programs which seek to find and propose solutions to mitigate against the catastrophic effects of climate change on humanity and the environment, using the Africa Day webinar .
I think there is a problem. I don't know whether only from my side, the president.
Yes, she is stuck. Honorable Chairperson, it looks like we have lost the president as she has been disconnected from the meeting. We'll try and connect her.
All right. I think I also experienced the same because I cannot hear him. He just get frozen. I don't know. But can you just reconnect her so that we can at least still have time? Because he was in the middle of her welcoming remarks. I don't know whether it's a network problem or, but fortunately I've got an IT specialist from my side. He will look into that. Our apologies, honorable members. I hope we can hear each other from wherever we are connected from. Can I get an indication with exclamation?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Chair.
It's that I cannot see the faces of the delegation in this meeting, though our IT wants to take this forum a very good picture of those that are connected, even if we are mute when it comes to the voice one. So don't hesitate to do that now that we are still reconnecting the president. Thank you very much, Prof. I can see you that side. Okay, we are trying to connect the honorable speaker for now. Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. I can see you there. They just want to zoom in, and the whole world is watching this, and I think it's going to be nicer to see the faces of leadership, stakeholders, and diaspora, and so on. But just a few seconds, honorable members. Eastern Cape, I can see you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, LF. We can see you, our interpreter. Can you attend the volume of this important excursion in time? Because I can't hear anything from where I am.
Is the keeper of our story.
That's better.
This place is engraved in the memory of my being. It's a piece of strength as I can hear. The new, the unknown. and turn the sight of the gifts you bear. The story will echo over the plains of the Karoo. My spirit will give flight and fly free to birth, destiny, and dreams. My salvation and freedom are buried in the deep mature mountains. It's where it all started. This is where I journeyed. I am home. I am the flesh of my forefathers, the adventurers, the brave, and the free. I praise Mother Africa for her riches, her coastlines, stretching like hope, echoing secrets, memories, and golden dreams. We hold hands, we cross rivers and bridges. We obey the heat of the land, this holy soil. I stand unapologetic as your shores crash and bring in the tide of tomorrow, signaling the call of new horizons and opportunity.
Well, thank you very much. I think honorable members, right on that note, can the controller stop the proceeding of the excursion for now, so that I can invite the chairperson of committee of chairpersons, because we are going to come back to the president and do her welcoming, but we just make the introduction of the panelists. That will be done by Honorable Nkopane, and I think who is also the chairperson of the Commonwealth Women Parliament sub-branch, as well as the chair of chairs. Ma'am, let me hand over to you to present formally and officially our panelists to the members of this webinar. Over to you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair of the CPA, Honorable Koshiani, our Deputy Speaker, our CPA President, the Deputy President, our national and international guests present here today, the African communities, honorable members, MPLs and MPs, especially those that are representing the province and the National Council of Provinces, all the institutions present here, the technical teams and the staff and management from the legislature, and all the legislative sector personnel that is connected to this important webinar day. It is my great honor and pleasure, esteemed presenters who have vast experience in different fields, and they are highly qualified. The legislature much appreciates your participation and bestowing us with your presence. Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to introduce the following panelists. Ms. Beatrice Carajo, Deputy Head of Mission, Kenya Mission Pretoria. Mrs. Carajo is a law graduate, a holder of a Master of Arts degree in International Studies from the University of Nairobi, a postgraduate diploma in women's law from the University of Zimbabwe, and a postgraduate diploma in legal studies from Kenya School of Law. Excellent communication skills and extensive experience of more than 27 years in both bilateral as well as multilateral diplomacy gained from working in Kenya's foreign mission in Washington, D.C., Addis Ababa, and currently at Kenya High Commission, Pretoria. Previously, Mrs. Karaho held the following positions: Director of Europe and Commonwealth Directorate at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Nairobi. Head of Chancery, Kenya Embassy, Addis Ababa. Second Counselor, Kenya Embassy, Washington, D.C. Honorable members and councillors, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mrs. Karaho. The next one would be Mr. Lechisa Sinodi, the Member of Parliament in Cape Town, National Parliament. Is an ANC MP, Deputy Speaker of National Assembly. Was re-elected the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly in the 6th Parliament of the Republic of South Africa in 2019. His second term as Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly has given us this opportunity to have him with us today. He has more than 25 years as a public representative, including roles in both legislative sector and the executive. Born at Belfontein in the Free State Province, Honorable Lechisa education at Bodibeng High School in Kroonstad. Over the years, he acquired the following qualifications: certificates in adult education, public policy, and facilitation. He's a graduate of the international program of the Gesalt Institute of Cleveland and Organization and Systems Development. He is currently a student in leadership, organizational and executive coaching. He is a level 2 trauma release exercise practitioner. Honorable Sinodi is the founding National Deputy President and later President of the South National Civic Organization, that is SANCO. He served as UDF's Publicity Secretary in Natal and was an active member of the ANC underground. He is still a member of the ANC and a member of the Central Committee of the South African Communist Party, following his re-election in its 14th Congress in 2017. Previously, he held roles of being Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Deputy Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform, member of the Executive Council, Free State Provincial Government, Local Government and Housing. Honorable members, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Honorable Deputy Speaker Sinodi. The next panelist will be Ms. Mahoto Megisotyu, the Member of Parliament. Honorable M.M. Sotyu is the Deputy Minister for the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment in the Republic of South Africa. Deputy Minister Sotyu holds the following qualifications: Advanced Diploma in Economic Policy, University of Western Cape, South Africa, a certificate in Sustainable Development from Malawi Institute of Management in Malawi, a certificate in Sustainable Development and Population Growth from the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. Deputy Minister Makgotso Magdalene Megi Sotyu joined the National Assembly Parliament of the Republic of South Africa in 1999. She served in many portfolio committees, including safety and security, social development, arts and culture, and science and technology. She was later appointed to chair the Safety and Security Portfolio Committee, the Security Cluster in Parliament, and Water and Environment Portfolio Committee. On the 1st of November 2010, Honorable Megi Sotyu was appointed to the position of Deputy Minister of Police, a position she held until 2017. Deputy Minister Sotyu was then appointed as Deputy Minister of Arts and Culture in 2017 to May 2019. After the 2019 elections, she was appointed to the position of Deputy Minister, Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Deputy Minister Sotyu. The next panelist is Ms. B. Snow. She holds a PhD with funding from United Kingdom Research and Innovation, Global Challenges Research Fund, One Ocean Hub at the University of Strathclyde. Yes, if I pronounce it correctly, in Glasgow in the United Kingdom. She is also an adjunct professor in the Institute for Coastal and Marine Research, Nelson Mandela University. She holds a PhD in botany. Benedict publishes in the fields of ocean governance, social ecological systems, marine spatial planning, and transdisciplinary research. She has contributed towards regional approaches for marine spatial planning and area-based management, particularly for the Western Indian Ocean region. Currently, she is an investigator on two community of practice projects, namely the Algoa Bay project, marine spatial planning and ocean accounts framework, both in South Africa. She is also involved with the Blue Action Fund project towards capacity development in the Utukela project. Work with co-researchers are focusing on integration and elevation of communities and indigenous peoples' inclusion in ocean-based area management approaches. She also is the lead on the Climate Services project towards building resilient coastal cities. Please come with me to welcome Professor B. Snow. And our last but not least panelist, very important one too, is Professor Spamandla Zondi. is in the Department of Politics in the University of Johannesburg. Professor Zondi is the professor in the Department of Politics at the University of Johannesburg, having held the same position at the University of Pretoria previously. For 10 years, he worked for the Institute for Global Dialogue at UNISA, both as a senior researcher and later as a director. His area of teaching and research interests include decolonizing of knowledge and power, international relations of South African politics, research methodology, and teaching and learning. His recent publications apply on decolonial lens of analysis on various subjects, including the struggle of the Chagos Island diplomacy. Amika Cabral and Aikweyi Ama. He holds a doctoral degree from Cambridge University. Honorable members, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Zondi. Honorable Chair, Honorable Kowosiani, thank you for the time and the opportunity that you have given me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson of CWP. Without wasting any time, Honorable Member, let me just add there will be inputters during the discussion time in order that they enrich the discussions. I know that Honorable Konza, who is the Chairperson of Social Development, is also going to make a statement when it comes to that. Mr. Josh Reid, the Consul General UK Embassy, I think also is joining us, and he will be part of that input discussion. Mr. John Kubido, whom we know very much as the Eastern Cape Legislature, is now at the Border Kai Chamber of Business, as well as Mr. Dion Spindel, Indigenous Knowledge Buyback Center, as well as Ms. Eunice Jacobs from the Indigenous Knowledge. I'm also reliably informed that our honorable speakers, the mayors, as well as the chief whips of our municipalities are also part of this session, Honorable Chairperson of the Committee of Chairpersons. Thank you very much for that adequate introduction of our panelists. We are now going to move, honorable members, to the next item, which is the introduction of the main topic that I will invite Professor Dr. B. Snow from the University of Clayfield. I hope she will lecture us on how to pronounce appropriately that word, an associate professor of Nelson Mandela University Coastal and Marine Research Institute. Ma'am, let me hand over to you at this time. Thank you very much. You are welcome.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome. I just, before I continue, just want to know, will my presentation be shared or can I have control?
I think it would be better if you control it from your side, and I think our admin will handle that, and you'll be in charge.
Certainly. I'm going to do that now. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for the warm welcome. Please note all observations of protocol have been observed. I would like to thank all the speakers for the contribution and the invitation here. And being as we have a very short amount of time, I'm going to dive into the presentation so that we can have opportunity for discussions and questions later on and for input. And just quickly, it's the University of Strathclyde, but not a problem in mispronunciation. We all do that every now and again. So I'm going to open this session talking a little bit about the ocean climate nexus and why this is important for human well-being. No matter where we are or where we are based on this blue planet, the ocean plays an important role in connecting us to food production, access to ecosystem services that we rely on, like climate, access to oxygen, the air that we breathe. It's really important for everyone, even if you don't live next to the coastline. That was just a quick on the One Ocean Hub. It's an international program, and the Nelson Mandela University is one of the partners on this large ocean research hub. It also includes other African countries, Namibia and Ghana. So let's talk a little bit about the climate realities, and I think some of us have experienced this already. We have seen drought, we are seeing floods, we're seeing this in the news in recent articles that are being played out. And so this is a climate reality. It's not something in the future, it's something we are experiencing now within Africa. And Africa has an extremely important role to play in mitigating and adapting to some of these climate realities. So at the recent UN Ocean Conference for Africa, to determine the roadmap for the UN Oceans Decade, they highlighted that within Africa, biodiversity loss of fauna and flora, animals and plants within our ocean space is increasing exponentially with every predicted temperature rise by 5 degrees, 0.5 degrees, we're having this unprecedented loss. With the loss of biodiversity and the functioning of our oceans, we lose those essential ecosystem services I spoke about, the climate regulation, the oxygen we breathe, the ecological infrastructure that helps protect us from sea level rise, the food, as well as those deep cultural connections that we have with the ocean. We have a loss of blue carbon habitats, and these are very important, particularly within South Africa, as well as within the African coastline, as these provide climate resilient mechanisms. And I'll talk a little bit more about these later. And we have already seen that cultural heritage is at risk with sea level rise, as well as coastal erosion. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So also at this UN Ocean Decade for Africa meeting, they highlighted certain ocean domains that we need to look at. Now, one thing is they're here in little blocks, but one of the resolutions and important aspects that I think needs to come from this discussion is that these are interconnected. They cannot be managed separately or seen as separated from each other. It's a system that needs to be integrated and managed collectively, and therefore there needs to be overarching policy, legislation, and implementation that speaks to climate change across these different ocean domains. So we have seen already through our research that we have been undertaking on the various projects of local vulnerabilities. We have noticed that there is a loss in livelihoods, particularly for coastal fishing communities, who have already seen a loss in biodiversity and access to the right size of fish. This is for a variety of reasons. It's a cumulative impact from overfishing, industrial dominance in fishing rights first, and they have less access, as well as climate and ecosystem or environmental variability. This impacts on food security and also impacts on access to very essential nutrients that is needed for survival. We have already seen that coastal erosion and sea level rise has impacted on paleohistory. In the video, you were showing how the history of the people of this country is represented and important for tourism, for cultural connections, and this is being lost already through climate impacts. We've also seen that there is a low adaptive capacity due to poverty, due to capacities, due to abilities to change to these variances that are occurring in our environment and along our coastline. And we're also noticing that by not doing anything and by how people are engaged in the process, that there are clear human rights violations taking place at this moment in time within Africa and in South Africa at the local level. So as promised, talking a little bit more about blue carbon habitats. These ecosystems store carbon, and they store more carbon than forests on land. These carbons are stored within the plants as well as within the soils and the roots, and they are retained for a longer period than those on land. So if we destroy them or remove them, we lose this particular ecosystem service. So why are blue carbon ecosystems important? Because they are there for climate mitigation. At a national scale, these blue carbon ecosystems contribute to mitigating emissions, which aligns with the Paris Agreement that we are signed up to and are then within our nationally determined contributions. Globally, if half of the current annual loss of these particular spaces are stopped, emissions could be reduced significantly. If we restore and have restorative projects and approaches within South Africa and the Eastern Cape, we will be able to offset the burning of coal. And here is a particular note as well. At the recent COP26 in Glasgow, South Africa were one of the signatories that agreed to reduction of the use of coal, not the complete emission or no longer using coal. And so that wording change is very important, that we then find other mechanisms if we're going to continue using coal to offset the carbon within that space. The importance of the restoration as well is that it protects us from sea level rise, flooding and storm surges naturally. Taking these away increases the risk to populations, to hard infrastructure and buildings. It also provides us with immense human health and well-being. We are connected through the river system. We are culturally and spiritually connected to water, and we also receive food and shelter and other services from these systems, ecosystem systems, not only the global benefits as a carbon storage space. And also, it's really important to note that these are opportunities for carbon offsets and climate financing through things like blue bonds. So there are some actions that we need to look at, and these are currently within a draft policy brief that has been produced by the Shallow Water Ecosystem Chair at Nelson Mandela University and her team. And these are looking at avoiding mining activities within these particular blue carbon habitats, protecting freshwater inputs, making sure they are clean and flow allocations, looking at abstraction and also the use of groundwater. This impacts negatively on blue carbon habitats, improve flow and exchange through estuary sea-ocean connections, remove poorly planned infrastructure where possible, obviously done within an accessible and human rights perspective, reduce the impacts of boating, develop enforce conservative setback lines, avoid clearing and soil disturbances, do not breach estuaries unnecessarily, and also limit the effluent that comes in. And you can see that this is a connection between many ministries, many departments, and many sectors to work together to achieve this. One of the other projects that was mentioned in my introduction was looking at the climate services required at local and municipal level. We have been working together with the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality for a couple of years now, looking at climate information and coastal adaptation required to build these climate resilient cities. And one of the things that has clearly come through is the need for co-production, the need for information and services that is relevant. So just having a database is inefficient. We need a database that is accessible, usable, and makes sense within a municipal. We've also noticed that even within structures, there is a disconnect between different departments who are not working together. So there is an awareness of climate change. However, there is an inability to do something about it. We also need to include, and one of the things that I'm really pleased is that we do have Indigenous knowledge holders and community members within our team and the panel and in the audience today with us, because many of the local solutions will come from the knowledge that is held by these important knowledge holders. And these knowledge holders need to be included meaningfully and respectfully within decision-making processes. We have seen local solutions that have come from local communities to look at how they can work better within these changing and variable environments. For example, in coastal townships, in shared spaces and commons that belong to all, improving energy, food and water security, looking at alternative climate-related jobs and circular economies. This is a way as well of moving away from job losses that are moving from non-renewables to renewable energies. One of the other things that we've also noticed is in terms of marine culture is a missing layer within our decision-making process. And one of the things that we need to consider, and I need to thank as well Anne Lemahue here for this slide, is the social considerations that are needed within planning and conservation, within area-based management, integrated coastal management, as well as marine spatial planning. And it's how do we include this knowledge and use in a meaningful and respectful way in contributing to the decisions that we're making for the future. So we need to have an integrated and adaptive management, local knowledge with co-developed sustainable solutions, ecosystem-based management tools, a social ecological systems approach. This means connecting ministries, not working independently, that the decisions that are made, say, within mining sector, or the decisions made within the Oceans Economy Master Plan will have an impact on the social and ecological system. We also need to climate-proof and make climate resilient the decisions we are taking within these different master plans or development approaches. Transdisciplinarity is key. And transdisciplinarity means inclusion of alternative knowledges, not just science to policy, but also inclusion of local indigenous knowledge, science knowledge into policy and working with politicians. Ecological infrastructure, blue carbon and accounting thereof is very important and needs to be include the ocean spaces. And we need to look at cooperation across scales, countries, and the different conventions we are signatories to. The long and short of it is that we need to understand that climate variability, climate change works across scales. We can see local impact on a global scale of carbon emissions, for example. We need to understand that we need to work across these scales. We need local solutions, national, regional, and global solutions across these scales, and can learn from the lower to the bottom of the scale. We also need to understand about time and changes over time. We may not see the impacts in our lifetime, but future generations will see it. We also need to understand, and particularly within the South African context is the policy mismatches, that there isn't a speak of climate and climate mitigation and adaptation strategies across our legislation and policies at this moment. So to sum up some of the lessons and possible resolutions that could be considered by the panel and by the honourable members of this meeting, is that a healthy coast and ocean is a human right. Doing nothing is a human rights violation. We all need these healthy oceans for essential ecosystem services. The ocean and the climate nexus is inextricably linked, and we cannot divorce them from one another. Blue carbon ecosystems, both along the coast as well as within the ocean, such as coral reefs or certain other ecosystems, are essential for adaptation and climate impact mitigations, like from sea level rise and storm surges. Blue carbon ecosystems are also future climate financing opportunities, such as blue bonds. Knowledge policy implementation interface needs time meaningful and respectful engagement and inclusion. And notice I use knowledge policy, not science policy. Capacity building is really important through co-designing solutions, writing policies together, and also looking at implementation processes. So this is climate financing, training, capacity building, and so forth. Siloed policy making and implementation reduces the country and the region's climate resilience. We need to find alternative mechanisms and bring these policies together. The blue, the national determined contributions. The country needs to look at their national NDC and feed these through to the national development plans and then cross scales down the scale into the IDPs. With that, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. And I think your well-refreshed, thought-provoking presentation is going to trigger appetite for discussions. And I think members that have connected really are going to take some of the recommendations that we have made, and we have splashed out this topic quite well. And thank you very much once again. There will be someone who's going to extend our hand of appreciation to you for the job well done. But let me indicate here and now that the National Parliament of Mauritius has also joined us. Welcome to the delegation from Mauritius. The Honorable Speaker of KZN, Kwazulu-Natal, is also amongst us, as well as the Western Cape Speaker. Thank you very much, leadership, for heeding to our invitation and enriching our discussion as the province of the Eastern Cape. We are neighbors and we are suffering the same fate of the subject that we're here to discuss. Without really much ado, honorable members, delegations, leaders of the diaspora and stakeholders in this session, we are now going to attend item number 5 and invite the Honorable Deputy High Commissioner representing Kenya in South Africa to present a subtopic on sharing the best practices and lessons in reducing environmental impact of industries and transportation. Your Excellency, ma'am, we are inviting you to address Eastern Cape Legislature, which is CPA sub-branch. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this very gracious invitation to address the nationals. The Eastern Cape Assembly. President of the CPA, Honorable Speaker, members of the Provincial Legislature, distinguished guests, and all protocols observed, I wish to express first and foremost my gratitude for the opportunity to make a presentation to the Provincial Legislature. And in making my presentation, I'm going to first of all give the national circumstances of Kenya. Then I will go on to present the legal and policy. The legal and policy framework that is in place to support the implementation of the climate change interventions in Kenya. And thereafter, I will go ahead and highlight some of the interventions that we have taken in the transport and energy sector, which are really the key that I think my presentation was based on. And finally, I'm going to look at the mechanisms that are in place to ensure that there is a follow-up and to undertake research and development aimed at improving the implementation of the same. So, looking at Kenya's national circumstances, I'd like to say that 84% of Kenya's land is arid and semi-arid with poor infrastructure and other developmental challenges, leaving less than 16% of the land area to support over 80% of the population. The Kenyan economy is dependent on climate-sensitive sectors such as rain-fed agriculture, water, energy, tourism, wildlife, and health, whose vulnerability is increased by climate change. Increased intensities and magnitudes of climate-related risks in Kenya aggravate conflicts, mostly over natural resources. This has also frequently forced the country to reallocate development resources to address climate-related emergencies. And generally, when you look at the impact, you realize that the impact does not affect everyone in the same way. You find that the impact on men, women, and other gender groups is affected differently. When we look at the main challenges that we are facing in climate change is that it's projected that temperatures would increase from 0.9 by 0.9 degrees centigrade to 1.1 by the year 2025. It's also projected that this will lead to warming of the coastal areas, and the rainfall projections are also projected that they are going to increase, therefore leading to floods at the coastal areas and other areas. Drought and floods, therefore, will be the main climate hazards, negatively impacting lives and livelihoods, with human health increasing at a risk. The sea levels, as I mentioned, are also projected to increase, and this is also estimated to lead to coastal flooding. And this also has happened frequently. So when we come to the area of energy, we find that Kenya has abundant renewable energy resources such as geothermal, solar and hydro for electricity generation. However, more than half of Kenya's households still use wood for cooking. Hydropower, which has been a major source of electricity for a long time, is increasingly impacted by variable and unpredictable rainfall. When we look at what exactly is the policy framework that we have in place to address some of these challenges, the first policy framework that we have is actually the country's development blueprint, which is the Kenya Vision 2030, which identifies climate change as a risk that would slow the country's development. Therefore, climate change has been incorporated into all the medium-term plans. Medium-term plans are normally done every 5 years, starting to 2017, and the third one, which we are currently implementing, which starts from 2018 to 2022. Climate change has been mainstreamed across all the sectors, and the country's focus is adaptation with mitigation potential. Maybe to go back, a great background on what climate change is and its impact in the world over. The good news is to mention that in 2015, we had the Paris Agreement signed, and this Paris Agreement brought together almost the whole world. About 152 countries together signed and committed to undertake mitigation and adaptation measures, as well as to contribute by the international partners towards alleviating or helping the poorer nations or the more vulnerable communities and nations to be able to put in place mechanisms to mitigate the effects of climate change, as well as also contribute to their national determined part of addressing the same. So Kenya ratified the Paris Agreement in signed it in 2015 when it came under discussion, and we ratified it a year later, which therefore means that we were bound by the provisions of the Paris Agreement and to implement it at the national level. The African Union, on its part, has been discussing the issues of climate change, which are bringing them closer home at the regional level. So in Kenya, we are taking into consideration the policy framework, which is a national development plan. We also went a step ahead and enacted a legal framework. First of all, the Constitution does acknowledge that everyone has a right to a clean and healthy environment. And to provide a legal framework for climate change, the Climate Change Act was enacted in 2016. The Act provides for a regulatory framework for enhanced response to climate change and mechanisms and measures to achieve low carbon climate development. It also establishes governance structures for climate change management in the country, with the National Climate Change Council being responsible for oversight and coordination. The National Climate Change Council is chaired at the highest level, which is His Excellency the President is the chair of the National Climate Change Council. And in addition, the Act defines the roles of both national government and county government. County governments are equivalent to provincial governments in South Africa. And it does provide for mainstreaming and implementation of climate change actions in the country. It also defines the roles of non-state actors in the reporting and managing of emissions. Non-state actors in this case would also include private companies, as well as, like non-governmental organizations and the civil society. So the Act also obliges the minister responsible for climate change affairs every 5 years to formulate an economy-wide climate change action plan that prescribes measures and mechanisms inter alia to guide the country towards achieving low carbon climate resilient, sustainable development and mainstreaming climate change into national and sectoral development planning and the county integrated development plans to ensure that the national action plan is implemented across all sectors. The Act provides that it shall be approved by the National Climate Change Council, which, as I mentioned earlier, is chaired by the head of state. Consequently, the implementation of a country's national determined contribution is also done through the current and successive national climate change action plans. Now, with regard to the institutional framework, the Act establishes the Climate Change Directorate as the lead government agency responsible for coordinating climate change plans and actions and related measures, monitoring and reporting. To ensure coherence, the Act designates the Climate Change Directorate as the Secretariat for the National Climate Change Council, with the responsibility of coordinating the technical aspects of the implementation of climate change functions. Such functions include providing analytical support and technical assistance on climate change, and coordinating the implementation of and reporting of the national climate change action plans, as well as capacity building support at the two levels of government. That's at the national level and county level, which is equivalent to the national level in South Africa and the provincial governments. The Act obliges at the sectoral level, that is state departments, to establish climate change units to integrate the National Climate Change Action Plan actions into their strategies and implementation plans. At the sub-national level, county governments are required to designate a county executive committee member to coordinate climate change in each county through the establishment of a climate change unit. Now, finally, after this, we have the legal framework, the institutional framework that details how implementation will be done. The next critical thing to ensure effective implementation is to have a review process which goes through the review of all the actions that are in place, and so that when you're coming to preparing the next medium-term plan or the next national action plan, then you're able to borrow from lessons learned from the previous implementation in order for you to develop other response mechanisms that will be able to address some of the challenges that are achieved and to enhance some of the positive lessons that have been learned. So now finally, there was the issue of looking at what are the mitigation initiatives that we have undertaken, especially in the area of transport and this transport and industry. In the area of industry, I think the critical area, first of all, is to look at the energy production. And in transport, to also look at the transport, it's also to look at some of the new developments that have taken place, which are aimed at lowering the use of fossil fuel, which leads to more emission of carbon. So what we have done in this area is that we have promoted the transition to clean cooking with alternative clean fuels. As I said earlier, most of the Kenyan communities use wood fuel. So we have tried to use LPG in urban areas and clean biomass, that is charcoal and wood, cook stoves, and alternatives in the rural areas. We have also increased the renewable energy for electricity generation. As I mentioned, we have hydroelectricity, we have solar, and we have wind. So we have tried to increase the production of the renewable energy so that and put it in the national grid so that we can avoid the use of over-reliance on hydroelectricity, which, as I said earlier, because of the rainfall patterns now changing, it's not as predictable as it was, and therefore to help move into sustainable energy, we have gone the renewable energy way. So we have climate-proof energy for electricity generation. We have a climate-proof energy and transport infrastructure. And then we have also developed affordable, safe, and efficient public transport system, including a bus rapid system in Nairobi. We have a reduced fuel consumption and fuel overhead costs, including electrification of the standard gauge railway. And then we have also promoted low carbon action in the aviation and maritime sectors. We have also introduced climate smart agriculture in line with Kenya's climate smart agriculture strategy with emphasis to efficient livestock management systems. We also have introduced sustainable waste management systems, which also led to production of fuel using biomass, and we also have harnessed the mitigation benefits of sustainable blue economy, including coastal carbon payment for ecosystem services. So in a nutshell, I think those are the actions that the Kenya government has undertaken in a bid to try and help with the climate change intervention, challenges. And one last one to address, because in the infrastructure area, a lot of the times we find when it floods, then we have the bridges collapsing, the roads also going into a mess in a similar way that I think South Africa experienced a few days ago in Durban. The same challenges have been experienced in Kenya. It has led to increased temperatures, locusts, infestation. So a lot of things have happened around that area. So in order to address the issue of flooding, also Kenya has its own projections on afforestation. And we have tried to increase the ground cover by about 10% in order to help mitigate the issue of flooding when it happens. So dear participants, Honorable Speaker, that is the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Mama Beatrice. Standing in for the Honorable Chairperson of the CPA, Honorable Kwazulu-Natal. A round of applause for Honorable. Thank you so much, Mama, for sharing with us your experiences in Kenya, as well as the concentration of the work that is being done in Nairobi and the entire country. Thank you so much. That is triggering our discussions and the questions that we have in mind, and also the mitigation that you are implementing to fight the issues of flooding. As South Africa, we are affected very much across the country, and in KZN and parts of the Eastern Cape in particular. At this point now, I will call and request the next speaker to take the podium. That will be Honorable Mandela Soyo, the Deputy Minister of the Department of Forestry. You're welcome, Mama.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I must inform you that I have a slight problem with regard to the network this side, but I will try my best to stay on. No, thank you very much, and thanks also to Dr. Kovashian. I see that we are standing in. I know the challenges. The Eastern Cape speaker, Ms. Sauls, thanks, colleague, and good morning. Let me also take this opportunity and recognize the presence of my colleague, Deputy Speaker from National Assembly, and all the speakers from the municipalities and also from other legislatures from provinces. Our international guests, good morning, and all our distinguished guests. From the onset, Program Director, I wish to express my gratitude to the organizers of this webinar for inviting me to partake in this auspicious gathering. Being part of the celebration of Africa Day, especially addressing issues of climate change and forestry as per your requirement, that I need to focus on the impact of climate change and also the role that forestry is playing when it comes to climate change. Program Director, in line with the theme, tackling climate change and its effect on the environment and humankind, I have been requested specifically to focus on how to forest combat climate change. There is no denying that the global climate is changing, and that is posing increasingly severe risk of ecosystem, human health, and the economy. Climate change has a growing impact on the African continent, hitting the most vulnerable hardest and contributing to the food insecurity and stress on water resources. We have experienced devastating flooding, wildfires, and severe storms, resulting in the loss of lives, destruction of infrastructure, and destruction of homes, as seen in the recent floods in KwaZulu-Natal and some parts of your province, which is the Eastern Cape. Even though the use of energy is by far the largest contributor to global greenhouse gas emission, deforestation also plays a significant role in global climate change. Forests are vital for us to live, as they provide us with food, shelter, and medicines, as well as many other useful things. Forests purify the air we breathe and the water that we need to survive on. It is important to note that the role of forests in the mitigation of climate change in the national, regional, and international space. Internationally, the global vision and plan of action for forests and people are enshrined in the United Nations Strategy Plan for Forest 2030. This is fully aligned with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In addition, several countries have included forest as a key component in achieving their carbon removal and emission reduction targets under the Paris Agreement. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, which referred to as FAO, Global Forest Resource Assessment 2020 report, the world has a total forest area of about 40.6 billion hectares, which is 31% of land surface. An estimated 420 million hectares of the forest have been lost worldwide through deforestation since 1990, and Africa had the largest annual rate of net forest loss in 2010 to 2020, which is about 10 years, at 3.9 million hectares, followed by South America, which is at 2.6 million hectares. Program Director, on the other hand, plantation forests cover about 1% of the land cover. Contribution of forests to climate change mitigation through activities such as 1, carbon stocks can be increased through plantation or agroforestry. Existing stocks can be conserved by reducing deforestation and rehabilitation of degraded forests. Emissions caused by forest activities can be reduced, for example, by using less energy or fertilizers in forest operations, and biomaterials and bioenergy, that is, renewable forest fuels and products that can be produced to substitute materials or energy that generate greenhouse gas. In terms of the adaptation, Chairperson, forests provide good ecosystem services through regulation erosion, landslides for water cycle, that is flood reduction, dry season, flow conservation in infrastructure development, and provision of wood and non-timber food products for community consumption and medicinal purposes. To mitigate and adapt to the effect of climate change, the South African government is implementing several initiatives through the demand of forestry fisheries, through the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, which is my department. A comprehensive ecosystem-based adaptation, which we refer to as EBA or EBA strategy, has been developed. This presents an opportunity for achieving the dual purpose of better managing forest and facilitating sustainable processes for societal adaptation to climate change. To enhance climate resilience, the department is working with the Adaptive Capacity Facility in a project which is funded by the government of Flanders, where there is restoration of a wetland in the Xilinga Dam in the Amatole district in the Eastern Cape. The project involves the removal of alien species from the area and educating communities about these issues. Along the garden route, a wildfire resilient project is also underway, where early detection cameras are being installed. Fuel road management, fire breaks, and a training academy and fire safety toolkit is also being developed in the same area. Program Director, this is part of the response to the devastating fires that devastated the Southern Cape during the 2017-2018 financial year, where more or less 15,000 hectares of land around the town of Knysna and about 5,000 hectares of forestry land was lost. I'm sure we all still remember that incident. In KwaZulu-Natal, in the Umzinyati district municipality, an early warning system for detection of flooding and lightning is being procured, and training for communities is underway, because it is very important for us as a department to make sure that we come up with campaigns so that we can train and teach people on how then to see when it is time for the rain of the floods that we've seen happening recently. All these initiatives will assist South Africa to adapt to climate change effects. Climate change is here. Climate change is with us. It is a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, forest mitigation is relatively quick and inexpensive in stabilizing and reducing carbon dioxide emissions. Thus, it will be important for us to conserve our existing carbon stocks. Thus, we must stop deforestation and avoid fires. As we are aware that the Eastern Cape is amongst those provinces that has the thickest forest in the country. Afforestation initiatives as outlined in the Commercial Forestry Master Plan, where there is a target of 100,000 hectares of new afforestation in the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. The master plan that we are talking about has been adopted and approved by the Cabinet in November 2010 in order for us to be able to manage issues of forest, because we know that that province, the Eastern Cape in particular, as I have said, is one of the provinces that has got a vast forest. The master plan promotes growth and investment in the forestry sector with a spin-off of transforming the sector and creating additional jobs that we desperately need as a country. As much as we are trying to fight issues of climate change on one hand, we also want to boost the economy of the Eastern Cape using the forestry sector. In addition to this, the department has been charged with leading the greening program for South Africa, where 10 million trees will be planted over a 5-year period. This is a presidential program, and instruction has been given to the department that we must make sure that for the next 5 years, we plant about 10 million trees. We need your support as our partners in ensuring that we green this country, as it is not only contributes to climate change, but it improves the lives of our people, as I have previously indicated. I would like to encourage the Eastern Cape Legislature to pledge their support to this program to assist in greening the Eastern Cape. The department is available to provide the necessary support in terms of what trees, species, and can be planted and in which areas. We'll be guided by the Eastern Cape, where they need this kind of trees. Then we'll avail ourselves and resources to make sure that we build we plant those trees in the Eastern Cape. As I have mentioned, fires are a major challenge that we are facing as a country, as they have a negative impact on our economy and can lead to the loss of lives. The implementation of the National Forest and Forest Act of 1998 is critical for all of us. The legislation promotes integrated fire management through a number of activities, such as the establishment of fire protection associations, which we refer to as the FPAs. These are institutions where landowners collaborate on assisting each other in ensuring that their land is protected against wildfires. This act is currently being amended through the Portfolio Committee. Stakeholders consultation will take place during this year, and I would like to encourage all of you, including the municipalities and traditional leadership, who play a huge role in the fire management, to participate and provide inputs, comments during this stakeholder consultation process. I saw from the beginning that the Speaker of the Western Cape is here. That's also one area that we think that the Portfolio Committee needs to have public hearings on this piece of legislation, as fires are also some of the challenges that we are faced with in the province of the Western Cape. Reducing emissions from deforestation and land degradation will be critical if South Africa is to reach net zero by 2050, as committed in the low emission development strategy. At the same time, we need to support the capacity of the country to mobilize resources and unlock private finance for forests. A mechanism such as the carbon offset regulation could provide an additional stream of funding from the private sector to support initiatives in the forestry sector. We must also indicate that the private sector invested close to 25 billion in the implementation of the master plan on forestry. Some preliminary case studies already show how cost-effective green infrastructure solution can be in promoting healthy forests. The promising sector of a growing bioeconomy in which biomass replaces non-renewable fuels and raw material is expected to develop rapidly. With the advent of this, we will enter a new phase in which the role of forest as a material source will become increasingly important. However, there is a need to balance the opportunities and benefits for economic growth and environmental management. Chairperson, we must advocate for sustainable forest management, ensure that our forests and forest land are used in a way and at a rate that maintains their biodiversity, productivity, and their potential to fulfill now and in the future their role in contributing to combat climate change. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, I want to encourage you to continue supporting the department in safeguarding our forests, our planet, and all its vital ecosystem for generations to come. I wish you a fruitful and successful discussion, and I hope that this webinar will emerge with concrete recommendations on how to address global climate change challenges that we are faced with. I must indicate that a week ago, we attended in Seoul, South Korea. We attended a World Conference on Forestry, where South Africa was very vocal on how to manage forest and also the benefit of forest. I think practicing on what was decided upon in that World Congress, will be in a position of working together with the provinces so that we can try our best to manage this sector and make sure that our people benefit from this sector. The Climate Change Presidential Commission is working very closely with the department, and the Commission is reporting directly to the head of states. It shows the importance of climate change on how we manage climate change, not leaving forestry behind, as this is the only natural forest or natural resource that can assist our government in trying to address some of the challenges that we faced when it comes to issues of climate change. I thank you very much, Program Director.
A round of applause for our Deputy Minister, Me Makgotso Mekisotyo. Ra leboha haholo mohlomphehi wa rona Kgabane. Me Mekisotyo for in the fight against this climate change or mitigating climate change through the forests and ensuring that we take up the program as the Eastern Cape, leading with the help of the department that you have blessed. Thank you so much. Shall we now request the Coastal and Marine Research Institute to take us to the digital excursion, and we see the Eastern Cape, visit all the areas of our province. Thank you so much. Over to you.
I think the video is still on mute. I can't hear any sound.
Where Africa meets three oceans, the Southern, the Indian, and the Atlantic. Home to Hurikwaho, the mountain in the sea. Esikaleni, the place of thunder. Mzansi, alive with possibility. The ocean has many meanings, but what does it mean to you?
It's a place for reflection.
Ulwandle indawo yokonwaba.
Ke sebaka se re phekolang.
A plek waar ons kos kry.
Indawo egcwele ububomi. Beneath its blue surface hide creatures far beyond our wildest dreams. The deeper we go, the more we learn. South African scientists are making incredible discoveries in our deep seas. Corals that are thousands of years old. The only known gathering of giant guitar sharks on the planet. Fields of sea pens home to young fish. Volcanic mountains covered with kelp forests. Mud plains sprawling with strange crabs and fishes. Ancient animals once thought extinct. Reefs home to fish found nowhere else on Earth. Sponges and sea slugs with cancer-fighting compounds. Who knows what else is waiting to be discovered? These ecosystems are the foundations for the seafood that we eat, provide millions of South Africans with jobs, and enhance our resilience to climate change. Our oceans attract millions of tourists every year and provide billions of rands to the South African economy.
We have recognized the huge potential of the ocean.
In 2014, the South African government launched Operation Phakisa to develop our ocean economy. This involves the expansion of marine and coastal tourism, the development of harbors and ports, aquaculture and mariculture, and offshore oil and gas. South Africa's development path aims to grow the economy while accounting for sustainability and the need for healthy, thriving oceans. To safeguard the benefits our oceans give us, South Africa is increasing the extent of our marine protected areas from 0.4 towards 5%. Join us in celebrating the treasures of our oceans. By protecting the seas of today, we ensure a rich heritage for our children. We owe it to them to make sure that our oceans are as healthy as possible. Healthy oceans, healthy people, healthy planet.
Eyona nto ibalulekileyo yinto okokubana masinganxibi ibhlankasi, masingajongi apha phambi kwethu, masijonge far apho siya kukude apho siya khoyo. Iinjongo zethu yinto yobana kungapheli okanye kubhenefithe thina, makubhenefithe nesizukulwane nesizukulwane.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, University of Nelson Mandela, especially the Coastal and Marine Research Institute, for this beautiful reflection. Indeed, the ocean is the place of reflection. Ocean is a place of happiness. This is our natural heritage. Healthy ocean is really giving us healthy people, as we are human living organisms. Honorable Deputy Minister, the guests, and President of the CPA, the Deputy Speaker, when you visit this province, please make it a point that you via Gqeberha and you visit this institute. They are doing tremendous research work, and the capacity that is there is really unmatched with our human expectations. Thank you very much, Professor Snow and your team. Indeed, we could see that our last discussions there at your boardroom is a reflection of what you are doing on the ground. Thank you very much once again. We are going to move with our program, with our stakeholders connected here, and now we are going to invite our department in the province of the Eastern Cape, represented by Mr. Lyndon Mardon, who is representing the Department of Economic Development and Environmental Affairs and Tourism in Eastern Cape. And so you will be walking us on the subtopic on mitigating the effects of emissions and the environment in fighting the climate change. We are now going to hand over to you in just 15 minutes. You draw our expectations and what we can recommend when it comes to this subject. Thank you very much, and over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just load my presentation.
But we can't see you as well. This is international.
Thank you, Chair. Can you see me now? My name is Lyndon Mardon.
I think you are suffering from load shedding. I can't see you from where I am. It's hard. Yeah, you can proceed. Maybe you'll come.
Thank you. Just waiting for the presentation to load on the system. Okay. Thank you. All right. So I've been tasked to talk to the mitigating effects of emissions and environment in fighting climate change. And Speaker, Deputy Speaker, Honourable Deputy Minister, Honourable Premier, Honourable Members, Senior Government officials, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for having me attend this session. Today we gathered here to discuss the question of climate change. The world has, through its slow actions and vested interest, ensured that we will experience significant climate change impacts for the foreseeable future. These impacts hold significant risk for the Eastern Cape Province. Recent events in our country have highlighted our vulnerability to climate-induced disasters. This is on the slide that's here is a depiction of a tornado event that happened in our province a couple of years ago. And you can just see the scale and the, if you were on the ground to experience the devastation, it is truly scary. Okay. The recent intense events, weather events over the last 6 months, are estimated to have cost the province in excess of 3.5 billion rand. A recent study commissioned by the Department of Environmental Affairs and Tourism indicates that for every year of drought, it costs the local economy 2.8 billion rand. It is therefore imperative that steps are taken to reduce our vulnerability and mitigate the impacts of climate change. South Africa is endowed with vast reserves of coal. This has meant that energy and electricity generated in South Africa has a very large carbon footprint. Due to the abundance of coal, our electricity generation is characterized by utilizing coal-fired technology. Greenhouse gas emissions associated with sorry, I'm battling a little bit here. As a province, we have an abundance of world-class wind and solar resources and have, over the last decade, taken steps to encourage private investment in renewable energy solutions for our country's energy ambitions. Through the Integrated Resource Plan, the country has upped the target for electricity coming from renewable energy to 10,000 megawatts by 2030. Currently, the installed capacity of renewable energy in the province has reached 1,509 megawatts, with solar only contributing 75 megawatts. This equates to an investment of 33.2 billion rand. The greenhouse offsets that are considerable. The province has been able to secure 17.1% of total investment into the Independent Power Producer Program, and this has and will also secure 7 billion rand in community net income over the project life. I would like to use this example to highlight that investing in greenhouse gas mitigation has brought direct economic investment and social benefits to the province and local communities. It is also mitigating the severity of load shedding which we face as a province. The provincial government manages the biggest portfolio of real estate in the province, where we own thousands of buildings. We have recently started a program to enhance energy efficiency of these buildings. In the last financial year, we retrofitted 51 public buildings, where we achieved our biggest success was in the replacement of inefficient incandescent and fluorescent light bulbs with energy efficient light emitting diodes. Many municipalities have demand management systems and energy efficiency programs, which all reduce the demand for electricity and by extension reduce our carbon footprint. Waste recycling and the circular economy offers huge opportunities to save valuable raw materials and energy associated with the processing of these materials. Waste recycling has shown a steady growth over the last few years. In 2019, we recycled 165,000 tons of waste, which has grown to 1.2 million tons of waste in 2021. There are 1,690 informal waste pickers operating at refuse disposal sites throughout the province and are credited with removing 108,000 tons of waste material from our refuse sites. Metal recycling always springs to mind, but the province also has a network of paper, plastic, and glass recyclers. The biggest challenge facing these individuals is that processing and the value stream is realized in other provinces, raising transport costs and threatening the viability of recycling. This also will increase the intensity of the process. Some exciting opportunities are offered in the space and include plasmolysis of plastic waste into waxes and cleaning materials, energy recovery from tires to support industrial processes, recycling and smelting of metals back into metal sheets, angle iron, and other useful commodities. The Kocha municipality recently built an asphalt road with the addition of plastic waste. Industry's contribution does not end there. Many industries are improving their energy and natural resource usage to more efficient technologies. A local provincial brickmaking manufacturing process a number of years ago introduced the vertical stack brick kiln. These technologies reduce the amount of coal used in the firing of bricks by more than 50%. Technology advances are meaning that many new solutions are available to reduce our carbon footprint. The electric car is one such solution. As a province, we have a large manufacturing base which contributes significantly to employment and by extension our economy. Our foreign export markets are transitioning to electric motor vehicles, and currently the government is revisiting our structural support to these industries, but over time we will transition to electrical motor vehicles. The energy intensity of modern electrical lithium-based batteries are not nearly enough to power heavy-duty trucks, trains and planes to transition to a low-carbon economy. This has meant that a new technology is required. Hydrogen as an energy source has been around for a number of years and appears to offer a suitable solution to this problem. There are many hydrogen sources and only green hydrogen appears to be environmentally sustainable. Currently in the Kocha SEZ, a company is undergoing the regulatory approval process to produce green hydrogen. As legislators, we are at the forefront of this transition to a zero carbon future, and government is a central pillar in this transition. Our role in this transition is fundamental to creating an enabling environment for the transition to happen. We will have to create an enabling environment for business and labor to transition and adapt. As much as business will be required to transition with new technology and amend business cases, so too will labor be required to reskill to meet these obligations. As a legislation body, we can create an environment which is receptive to these challenges with programs and processes to address all aspects of this transition. Failure to do so will mean that we will become irrelevant and uncompetitive as a province and a country. As government, we must be sensitive to the speed at which we transition, and in this regard, we will be required to transition. In this regard, regulatory and economic instruments become critical in implementing a just transition, where government procurement programs are set to respond to climate change through internal government planning, monitoring and reporting systems. To lead and guide the private sector, sector emission targets become critical elements which will govern the pace at which economic and industrial sectors reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Currently, the South African Revenue Service has created a carbon tax. This mechanism will disincentivize sectors to continue to operate as usual. The South African Parliament and Government has ratified the Paris Accord of 2015. The Accord recognizes the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. This in effect means everyone should contribute to the fight against climate change, no matter how small their contribution may or will be. Climate change is cross-cutting. The legislature can create an obligatory responsibility for provincial and local governments to create such structures for implementation of climate change programs. Without governance structures to plan and implement programs, no progress will be made in transitioning to a zero carbon future. This would also apply to the development of a program of resilience to the impacts of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for this presentation. And I think on the next point of discussion and inputs, indeed, the delegates to this important webinar will be in a position to reflect and also make some additions and put some ingredients into this important question and subtopic. Honorable members, esteemed delegation to this webinar, as we all know that we are still searching for solution as Africa on this African Day. Can you please mute your mics so that we continue with this piece that we experience in this webinar? I don't know who is speaking, but I think it's disturbing the proceedings. We are now coming to item number 9. But I think I must indicate this way before we can make some comments. I will also invite here and now, if there are comments, Honorable Konza, that you want to make as the point of contributing in these inputs here, I will invite you. I will also invite Consul General from UK Embassy, Mr. or Your Excellency Josh Reid, if he's still here, just to make a few remarks, and Mr. John Cupido from Boracay Chamber of Business, Mr. Dion Pandiel from Indigenous Knowledge Buyback Center, and Ms. Eunice Jacobs from the same institution. Before I can open up for the floor to make a very solid and vibrant contribution in this important gathering. At least we still have time. The time now it's past. We have delayed by 10 minutes. We can recover that time before I invite Professor Zondi. I'm now inviting you, Honorable Chair of Social Development. Your input, ma'am.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, the Deputy Speaker of the Legislature. I was trying to put on the video, but it is stubborn.
I know you are there.
Thank you very much. Honorable Speaker and the distinguished leadership protocol observed. In appreciation of the contributions and the recommendations that have been made specifically by the professor at the beginning of the discussions, it is clear that climate change impacts negatively. And sorry, there is something that is disturbing me, Honorable Speaker. Oh, okay. Can I start? Can I start again? Thank you very much.
That's no problem.
Of the contributions and recommendations made by the speakers and panelists in the platform, it is clear, Honorable Chairperson, that the climate change impacts can be categorized to having impacts on a minimal scale and to what we have recently observed in South Africa, particularly in the KZN and some parts of the Eastern Cape provinces. We are noting that climate change related disasters such as floods, storms, excessive wind, and heat waves have catastrophic effects on the humankind and the environment in general. This puts an immense pressure on resource allocation and systems designed by governments in the African states and on certain provinces in particular. It is also evident that socioeconomic disparities become unavoidably clear during these disasters. And at the slightest weather disorder, affected most are the poorest in the communities and those whose geographic location and places of residence because of history would be in unplanned areas that are by their nature prone to be affected. This is not to undermine how these disasters affect the economic setup and the potential they have on the investment and business retention or lack thereof. For us as parliamentarians, therefore, and in our oversight role and work specifically, we are forced more than before to take much interest, firstly, on how the executive, through their strategic plans, are going to plan and allocate resources for disasters in general, and most importantly, those impacted by climate change. Because our first line of defense to these disasters is meaningful planning, which is inclusive of planning for risks and monitoring. This would include, but not limited to, Honorable Chair, 1, revised model and distribution of equitable share and other allocations to provinces and municipalities to address backlogs and disparities in the nature of their socio-economic livelihoods. 2, deliberate investment on infrastructure and sustainability thereof. And for a mostly rural province like ours, this has to be biased deliberately so towards the most rural parts of our province. 3, adequately resourcing and maintenance of the same infrastructure. This needs to be our focus, as it is no secret that even in the urban and semi-urban areas, our infrastructure is aging and collapsing. 4, integration of service or responses and amassing of resources by all spheres of government, by private sector, by NGOs, like the gift of the givers, as we have seen recently. And an example for intra-provincial and inter-provincial structures, in order to ensure that there is effectiveness in the planning and also the distribution of these resources. 5, the concentration efforts on planning and resourcing of the preservation of our environment. And lastly, and most importantly, Program Director, prompt and timeless access to internet and critical information for all people, including those in rural areas, in order for them to be able to access urgent warnings on torrential rains or any other abnormal weather conditions, as the case might be, as it has been shown that the lack of access to information might also be contributing to them not taking heed of the necessary steps in time. I thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Can we now invite the Consular General, Mr. Josh Reid?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Very audible and clear, so we can see you as well. Good afternoon.
Super. That's great. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the speakers, the Programme Director, Honourable Speaker, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and the whole legislature team. It was also really nice to see Dr. Snow's presentation, which highlighted the really strong science and research links that we have between the UK and South Africa, and particularly on ocean sciences. So very pleased to join today. It's obviously really important that we work globally to build resilience and support the communities to adapt to the climate crisis, recognising that we're already seeing the impact being felt already and seeing it disproportionately affect the poorest communities in the world. And obviously, it's clear that in the Eastern Cape, we're already seeing the impact, what with day zero looming in Nelson Mandela Bay and the worsening trend of droughts and floods. So that said, I did just want to touch on how critical it was that we target the root cause of climate change, which is obviously emissions, and without that work to address the underlying factor behind climate change, the impacts are going to continue to grow. And so we're obviously going to render any effects or any efforts to support the adaptation or resilience in communities as redundant. They're obviously crucially important as well. So there's a part for us all to play globally in helping decarbonisation efforts, particularly in poorer countries and particularly in middle-income countries like South Africa, but recognising, and I think it was touched on by a couple of speakers, so recognising that South Africa faces particular challenges. So it's got to be done in a way that's fair and just. And I don't want to take up too much time because there's far more qualified people than me on this webinar today. But I do just want to mention quickly the Just Energy Transition Partnership, not least as for the UK, it's the #1 shared priority between our two countries. And we're really hoping that it's going to lead to genuine impact across the country and in the Eastern Cape and other provinces. So I'm sure most of you know, but for those that don't, the JETP is the agreement between the UK, the US, France, Germany, and the European Union. Got to make sure I don't forget anyone, with South Africa. So it's the groundbreaking partnership that we launched at COP26 to support the accelerated just energy transition for South Africa. So the aim is to match real genuine ambition for South Africa with real commitment from wealthier countries to make sure that we can achieve the highest levels of ambition that South Africa set out at COP26. Dr. Snow touched on that in the first presentation, which is obviously going to be needed for the best case scenario of limiting to 1.5 degrees of warming globally. And unfortunately, that is the best case scenario. So hopefully you've all seen the task force that South Africa set up, being led by Daniel Mandela, to develop the investment plan, to work with international partners on making sure that this can be delivered within South Africa. And inevitably, that's going to need to include actions and engagement in the Eastern Cape and with the other provinces as well. And we talked a bit about sort of reflecting the need to balance the interests of communities as well. And this partnership is really critical because it does recognise the risks to coal communities against a backdrop of high unemployment and inequality in the country. And it's going to need a concerted effort on the part of the whole of government, so provincial, national and municipal, as well as responsibility for us as international partners. So yeah, it's really great to see the focus today on these critical issues, and to see the kind of importance that's been given to it within the legislature, within the Eastern Cape government and municipalities as well. And if there's time, and just a couple of things that we're really keen to kind of keep picking up in partnership with you is how do you see the Just Energy Transition Partnership being developed in the Eastern Cape? And what more would you want to see from the UK and international partners to tackle emissions and to support adaptation and resilience? But thank you very much for the opportunity to join today.
Thank you very much, Honourable. Quite a mouthful indeed. We are going to have a summary of these kinds of discussions as we are proceeding with our program. We are now going to invite Mr. John Cupido from the Border Kai Chamber of Business to make an input in this discussion. Over to you, sir. I don't know, Secretariat, whether Mr. John is confirmed to be here. But in the meantime, I think let me invite the next person, Mr. Dion Spendiel from Indigenous Knowledge.
Good morning, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but who is speaking?
Okay. It's Dion Spandil.
Oh, fine, sir. You can proceed.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Good morning to everybody, all the honorables. Let me say all protocol observed. I'm Dion Spandil, Chairman of the Eastern Cape Coalition Small Scale Fisheries. I'm also the chair, also the leader of the coalition community in my area, the Griqua. So I just want to say, I didn't prepare for this because I had a lot of meetings. I couldn't prepare, but let me tell you what I know. We had the past season that has just closed in the fishing industry. We had a bad run with the fish. The reason why the slightest change in ocean temperature chase our fish away, certain fish, because they need a certain temperature to grow, to lay their eggs, and especially near shore. So what happened? We had this problem in the ocean where there was no fish. Actually, choka, especially the choka, we couldn't catch it because of climate change, change in temperature, the rising sea. And I just want to say that if we don't tackle this, then the worst thing will happen. Where a few years ago, it happened 3 times where there was no fish in the sea. And the researchers can back me on that. A few years ago, there was no fish in the sea. It happened 3 times in the past. So if we don't tackle this climate change now, the worst thing will happen, and our livelihood will die out. We as the community or community, cultural, we live from the sea, and that is the most healthiest food we can get. Another thing is this: ocean water is the most purest of all forms, and if we pollute it, things will change drastically in our health system, because open wound, go to sea and bathe it in the sea, and you'll see how quickly it healed. But if we don't do something about the climate, things like this won't happen. You see, and we use the sea also as a cultural event. We use the sea to cleanse ourselves. But apart from that all, the climate, the sea temperature must stay the same for our livelihood, alternative livelihood, and that is where we live from. And to tackle this thing, I think government must think of co-management. Use us to sit with them around table to tackle this thing. And if they don't use it, things will drastically change in the near future very quickly, because what they do, they think of the cultural community that they have no knowledge, but that is not true. But if they take our knowledge and put it together with the researchers and all those people, and then they will see how they can tackle these things, how the climate will come back to normal again. And I thank you for that, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dion. May we now invite Ms. Eunice Jacobs to make a few remarks as well. Before I can just allow a few hands before I invite Professor Zondi to take us to item number 10 as a moderator of that particular analysis. Ms. Eunice. All right. In the absence of Ms. Eunice, I also invited Mr. John, but I can get a sense that he's not in the webinar. I don't know whether, honorable members, is there anyone here would wish to make a point right here before we disengage from this item and we get a summary of discussion and analysis from our moderator? Can I extend invitation to participants here? I don't know, Mr. Abdul Al-Tunji, the Secretary General, Community of Nations in South Africa. Any comment that you want to make?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Deputy Speaker.
Morning, morning. Just before you proceed, Honorable Sir, I will then, the last person will be our Deputy Ambassador, Uganda High Commission, Mr. Kintu Onyago. You can proceed, Mr. Alutunji.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Greetings all, and Jumbo Africa. And allow me to then extend a happy birthday wish, to the motherland, our continent, the beautiful Africa. All protocols observed. Africa is undergoing a rapid transformation, and the climate change seriously threatens, to undermine all of the development and progress that has been made so far, including poverty reductions and the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals. Our recent assessment has shown that the economic cost of climate change in Africa are likely to be significantly higher in relative terms than in other regions of the world, that the adverse impact of the climate change are already manifesting itself on the continent in more frequent occurrences of climate change events such as floods, droughts, and the heat waves. But the major concerns for African key economic sectors with the disastrous consequences, this include the heightened threat of food security, the inadequate water resources availability, and degeneration in natural resources productivity, diminished biodiversity, as well as increasing desertification and coastal zone recessions. It is high time that African countries strategically position themselves in line to introduce renewable energy sources that will improve the lives of the citizens and economic development. The recent flood incidents in Kwazulu-Natal in South Africa here is a warning that climate change will and can impact the growth and development of our communities in an unprecedented way. But our prayer remains that, God Almighty continue to, to protect Africa and to protect us all. Again, I wish Africa a blessed and happy birthday. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. I'm advised that the Deputy Ambassador of Uganda, High Commission in South Africa, is not connected. I don't know what might be the problem. But let me again invite Ms. Eunice Jacobs, whom I'm informed that she's part of this platform. Can you quickly, ma'am, connect and make your input, because we are concluding this item now. Okay, because we can't wait without anyone saying anything in this platform. Let me then now progress, and thank you very much to our inputters during this input session. And I think, Prof, you have managed to hear the impact of this climate change, the issues of heat wave, and the pressures in the resource allocation, socio-economic disparities, and the disorder that is affecting our communities and socio-economic structure. And how are we going to respond as members of the legislature and parliament when it comes to oversight roles? What is it that we must look for when it comes to departmental operational plans and annual performance plans in the light of these new indications? And I think the whole issue of risk planning, which must be meaningful going forward. And the Deputy Consular General, Mr. Josh Reid, also indicate the decarbonization, climate justice, issues of just energy transition, collaboration and partnership between us. The Khoisan community, Dion, is also indicating where we are coming from, the purity of the oceans, our seas, and the impurities that we need to handle and attend as communities in tackling this very crucial subject as African continent, Eastern Cape and South Africa in particular. And the whole idea that this is going to change the architecture of our planning, this is going to change how we are doing things, the issues of adaptation, all of those kinds of discussions were flowing from this short presentation by these honorable members. I think with due respect to all the delegations, I will now invite item number 10, which is the summary of discussions. And Prof, your analysis, which I know is going to be penetrative to all members connected here. As you were introduced representing the Department of Politics, University of Johannesburg, as a friend of this legislature, you are welcome to take the stage. So thank you very much, Prof. Over to you.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Speaker, and the leadership of this great and august legislature, the Honorable guest, the Deputy Speaker of the National Parliament, and the honorable guests that are here. I must just say I've been really impressed by the richness of the conversation here. I am actually usually a very critical mind, but I have really been immersed in what has been raised here. I'm immersed because it is happening against this particular backdrop. It is a backdrop of clear evidence that our climate is changing, and that in its changing nature, it is affecting us in ways that we may not fully understand, and that it is affecting every segment of society, the rich and the poor, the urban and the peri-urban and the rural. It is affecting the small and the big cultures. We are in it together. It is a true global challenge, and that requires a global solution and social solutions locally. This is manifesting itself like in the floods, as was mentioned in this meeting, the drought in the eastern part of Africa, and on the Horn of Africa, now in the Sahel. A terrible, terrible drought is happening here. We've seen the heat affecting parts of South Asia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and that part of the world. Terrible, terrible heat. And it has affected Europe also more recently as well. We have seen extraordinary, unusual snowing in parts of the world where they have snow. We have seen a lot more snow in this part of the world than it usually is. So indeed, climate is changing. It has always been changing for a period of time, and that is the message. The message that comes out right through is that this matter is of concern, and that this matter affects the ocean, as we heard from the first speaker, Professor Snow, and that the effect on the ocean, just like the effect on the forest, as we heard from Deputy Minister, or the effect on energy, as we heard from Her Excellency, the High Commissioner, are all effect on this one thing called the ecosystem. The ecosystem has been affected, and the ecosystem is what we depend upon as human beings in order to live, in order to thrive, in order to exist. And that is very important. The second point that came out from everyone, is that the loss of this ecosystem and the habitats that go with it, and the organisms that go with it, and the vegetation, like forests, that go with it, would be catastrophic for us and for our society going forward. The third point that comes up is that the effect may manifest in one sort of area, but they ripple across various parts of the area, which makes this much more dangerous than any other threat we face. Because many threats we face can be limited to a particular area, zoom in on them, contain them, and manage them. But this one ripples across, which then challenges our ability to act in an integrated fashion, coordinated way, and in a collaborative manner. And that is what has come forth everywhere. Everybody has said what you need is collaboration, partnership, and I would add solidarity. Solidarity, because solidarity is deeper than partnership and cooperation, because it's not born out of aligning interests and finding common interests, but it's based on a recognition that what affects my neighbor affects me in the real sort of way. I'm not doing charity on the other. When the UK is building this relationship with South Africa on climate, it's not doing charity on South Africa. It is also helping itself. When other countries also relate, when we relate with other countries, such as we do now, assisting Malawi plant climate resilient potatoes, doing that together with the Irish. When we do that to Malawi, we are not doing charity towards Malawi, but we're exercising solidarity, and we better know that. Another point that comes right through is the point around planning, planning and planning and planning. And this point places the 2012 National Development Plan South Africa has at the center of everything that we do. Because already in 2012, we had laid out what the framework was going to be, how we were going to approach the whole thing. The problem with us, generally with us, and it happens even in my family, I'm not sure it happens in my family, is that we are much better in planning than in implementing the things that we plan. We are much more united in developing a vision and developing a plan and a policy and a framework. But we kind of slack when we have to implement it because we want to move to plan something new, move to announce something new. But the challenge that's being posed to us here is that we know exactly what needs to be done. It's also in the Paris Agreement. But the challenge is whether you will do it with the tenacity, with the energy that would do the actual planning. The national planning, national development plan is very clear about what we do. And the challenge is going to be the gap between planning and implementation. And that gap is not just about climate, it's also about health, it's about education. It's a general problem we have to overcome, which is the ability to do what we said we wanted to do and not be distracted by new ideas that we want to do. The other issue that came out right through is the critical importance of infrastructure, that everything requires an adaptation of infrastructure, the building of infrastructure that we need in order to achieve the things that we do. We need to also think about how the policies talk to one another. We shouldn't have a water policy that undermines our forestry policy or energy policy, but that's part of the job of Parliament because it has a global purview. It can see through all the 26 portfolios of a government and be able to see where there are clashes, where there are potential sabotage, because sometimes we honestly put together a good idea that is going to sabotage another good idea. So that process is going to challenge Parliament very strongly. Another matter that is being spoken about very strongly here are the efforts at adaptation. The adaptation towards a climate resilient society, towards a low carbon economy and all of that. So that change does not completely dislocate us, but we are able to harness it and take it forward. So climate smart agriculture, such as they do in Kenya, energy transition, such as was mentioned by Lyndon, and to do that through partnerships with others, but also partnership among ourselves, the state and the non-state actors. We didn't hear much about the role of NGOs because they play a very critical role, but the role of private sector, we heard quite a bit about it. Now, my last 2 points is this, that it's very clear that the climate change problem is a huge attack on us, but it's also very clear that it is a huge opportunity to transform the economy, the society, the country we inherited. The countries that we have right now are really literally built after the 1600s. So we really built on that legacy of the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s through colonialism. Then we get into that thing. That structure of things has got to change for us to then exist again for another 500, 600 years. So this climate change thing is a godsend opportunity challenge to force us into make some really hard choices that we need to make, including redefining our relationship with ourselves, relationship with indigenous communities, relationships with external actors, internal actors, and things of that nature. And that's what that would do, is that it would require a better handling of information, awareness, and consciousness. I need to put in that order, because we need information about what is happening where and there. We need awareness, which is about what we need to do in response to that with the information that we have. And then lastly is consciousness, which is a deep sense of understanding of things that can cause us to change our behavior. With information and awareness, we will know we might not change much, but with consciousness, we will then be able to undertake the changes that we would not undertake under a normal peacetime. What we've heard then, therefore, is that we are changing, and the climate is changing us now. I'm reminded of the words of Mwalimu Nyerere, who said when he got into government in the 1960s in Tanzania, that he realized, he told his people, he said, I told my people that we've got to have to adapt and change, or we will be changed. Then he says, no, but I realized, no, I'm wrong. It's not a choice to change. They will just have to change, because change is absolutely necessary for freedom and development. So we too are in that situation where it's not actually an option to change. It's a necessity of life for our survival, for our resilience, and for our productive future going forward. I trust that all of us that are here will find something for each one of us to do a little better to enable this integrated, collaborative, far-sighted effort to manage what is actually an existential threat to all of us. And we can, if we acquire the consciousness that says climate feeds us, but climate is suffering, and climate needs us to help. But thank you very much, Eastern Cape, for leading us in this very crucial global conversation. I trust that we will take very specific action, including exercising strong and coherent oversight over what has already been decided, which now simply must be implemented. Nyabule.
Thank you very much, Prof. Quite a mouthful. At least there is something that we must do. I like two terms that we have mentioned, action as well as consciousness. I think indeed this is why we decided to converge like this, so that we can plan what kinds of actions are we going to take, under which circumstances our consciousness is telling us that in order for future generations to inherit this continent, the leaders of today must think of those that are going to take this country forward after us. Thank you very much, Prof. I can see Mr. John Cupido, you are back. I don't know, because the word of business is so much important. If you are here, I can give you a few comments before we table in this webinar what we believe are the recommendations and possible recommendations before the Honorable Deputy Speaker National is taking the podium to thank everybody by closing remarks, and I invite back the President of the sub-branch to declare this session officially closed. John, are you back here so that I can give you those few moments?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, the comments that I have is it's been very impressive from all the different speakers. There's a lot that we need to learn, and I think it's very important that us as Africans learn best practice from other countries. I know that myself in one of the projects that I'm working in, Nigeria is a world leader in some of the production of, for example, rabbit meat and byproducts. And the more a person learns, the more you learn that Kenya and Nigeria are world leaders in many agricultural aspects and many production aspects as well. So I think it's something that we definitely need to look at, and learning best practice from our neighbors is something that we definitely need to look at and do in the future. So we are definitely fully supportive of this initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. Quite wonderful. We know that the impact of business and industries in the subject that we are discussing and kind of mitigation plans. As a business community, you are also discussing and deliberating on those. Honorable Delegation, President of CPA Sub-Branch, Honorable Deputy Minister, members of CPA and the members of the executive of the sub-branch, I think now we are entering the phase of presentation of resolutions, and I think if the Secretariat can just show for members to take note, but we are going to furnish each and every member of this platform these kinds of recommendations and the proceedings of today via your emails. So I would request the Secretariat to show these recommendations. But in the interim, whilst they are still doing so, I wish to also indicate that we are now coming to the conclusion of this session and want to table officially in front of you Deputy Speaker, National Parliament, Deputy Ambassador from Kenya, and speakers from other legislatures, members of our own legislature, Eastern Cape, in the presence of Consul General UK Embassy, Professor Zondi, as you represent the academic sector, the Secretary General, Community of Nations and Diaspora. We are presenting this declaration as follows. We, as the participants of this Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Eastern Cape Sub-National Branch, gathered in this webinar on this day of the 25th of May 2002 to commemorate Africa Day with a view under the theme of tackling climate change and its effects to the humankind and the environment as the theme of this webinar, acknowledging, honored members, that the maintenance of African unity and peace among African countries is paramount, as set out by the formation of Organization of African Unity, as it promotes nation building through unity and freedom from oppression, highlighting the aspirations contained in the AU's Agenda 2063 in making Africa's cities more habitable, as well as seeking to deliver inclusive and sustainable development as espoused by the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Africa Region's Objectives and Program of Action. An Africa of good governance, democracy, respect of human rights, justice, and rule of law. An Africa where development is people-driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially its women, youth, and caring for children. Understanding that our struggle for a better life in South Africa, as enshrined in the international relations policies intertwined with the country's pursuit of other better Africa and the better world. Appreciating that Africa Union has designed 2022 as the year of nutrition, meaning that on this day, the world must join together in solidarity with Africans to strengthen food security and put nutrition of every person, thus a need to intensify efforts to end pandemic, reform the global financial system, stop climate change, and silence the gun across all conflicts. Agreeing that the implementation of the resolution on climate change have been identified as a pivotal for everyone to understand and participate in solving challenges presented by climate change, and resolve to follow the United Nations framework on climate change, which urges countries to cooperate in the process of mitigating effects of climate change by exchanging good practices and lessons learned and strengthening national institutions. Of course, by promoting the protection of the world's biodiversity, living in harmony with nature, and implementation of steps to improve accountability mechanisms for oversight and lawmaking, as government needs to account about plans initiated to mitigate effects of climate change. I will now table some of the resolutions which honored members will be in a position to see under the various themes that were highlighted by presenters here. Resolution number 1 under the sub-theme sharing best practices and lessons in reducing environmental impact of industries and transportation. This is what we have now come to understand. And I think the resolution is quite clear. We have to enact laws that provides the legal framework for enhanced response to climate change at both national and provincial level, also to increase forest cover to at least 10% by 2027, which the Deputy Minister alluded to, in order to contribute to the protection of our water towers and associated ecosystem services. promote collaboration among governments, private sector, civil society, and individual citizens to fight and mitigate effects of climate change. This is one greater highlight that we want to table this resolution. The second resolution is under the sub-theme, how does forest combat climate change? Indeed, we agree in this platform that developing sectoral response plan aligned with the NCCAS to form part of the implementation when the bill is approved. I think if we can narrate that acronym, it will help the resolution to be much more clearer, Secretariat. Improving climate resilience and investing in climate-proofing infrastructure or ecological infrastructure, and mainstream climate change into forestry sector policies and strategic plans. Urban and rural tree planting with 1 tree planted per household is what we are recommending very strongly as part of the resolution of today's program, and monitor adherence to sectoral emission targets and sector response plan, and provide technical capacity to support district local municipalities to develop climate change response and adaptation plans. And I think on resolution number 3, which is under the sub-theme mitigating the effects of emissions and environment in fighting climate change, I think the legislature to monitor all UN and related conventions in the province across portfolio committees. And this is what I believe we're supposed to do as this sub-branch. And waste reduction and recycling initiatives should be mainstreamed across all spheres of government. And we're so much happy to see that the troikas of local municipalities and districts and our metros in the province were invited to attend this important session. By advocating for transition to clean technologies and renewable energy at all levels of society. And the last thematic area, general resolution under the theme tackling climate change and its effects to the environment and humankind. The blue carbon ecosystem, coastal and ocean are essential for adaptation and climate impact mitigation. Capacity building is also vital through co-designing solutions, developing policies and implementation thereof. In developing policies and implementation, government must promote collaboration among stakeholders in order to create sustainable, not only across communities, but across countries as well. Revise model and distribution of equitable share and other allocation to provinces and municipalities to address the backlogs and disparities, and deliberate investment on infrastructure and sustainability thereof. And for the most rural provinces like ours as Eastern Cape, Kwazulu-Natal, Limpopo, and other rural featured provinces, this has to be biased deliberately so towards the most rural parts of our province, and adequately resourcing and maintenance of the same infrastructure given aging and collapsing infrastructure in both urban and semi-urban areas. And I think integration of services, responses, and amassing of resources by all spheres of government, private sector, and NGOs, like the gift of the givers, as an example of effectiveness of fast impact. Strengthening of our global, African, international, and intra-provincial collaborations on awareness and programs to combat climate change effects. Concentrate efforts on planning, resourcing of the preservation of our environment, and prompt and timeous access to internet and critical information for the people in order to access urgent warning and torrential rains and other abnormal weather conditions. Honorable members, our guests, Africa as a whole, our representatives from various countries, we are formally tabling these resolutions to this Africa Day webinar session as the sub-branch and Eastern Cape Legislature to these delegates for adoption as well as endorsement. I formally, on behalf of the CPA sub-branch, doing exactly that, forwarding, tabling them, and if there are issues that you would like to highlight here and now, you have that opportunity to do so before I invite the Honorable Deputy Speaker of our National Assembly. Thank you very much. I now put the recommendations and resolutions. Agreed? I can see Honorable Nkopana.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure whether it is captured correctly or I may not, it might have missed me. There was a concern that was raised on the participation of the NGOs in this program of the climate change mitigations and all the program. So I think as the legislature, we should also look at the involvement of the NGOs as well as the other institutions, the Chapter 9 and 10 institutions and other stakeholders. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I can see under the integration of services, response and amassing resources by all spheres of government, private sector, NGOs, like the gift of the givers. Maybe it's a question of emphasizing that point, that nothing we can do as government alone without collaborating with our non-governmental organizations. But I think we can expatiate on that point to have a single line that is purposefully trying to draw the attention of that close working relationship. Thank you very much for that emphasis, Honorable Chair of Chairs. If we agree, Honorable Members, and we adopt these resolutions, we can build on them, try to make them much more smarter to meet the international standards with everything related to how to package our resolutions. But this is just a draft work because we're taking notes as we were getting presentation from honorable members. If we do agree, we are now on item number 13. If there is no other input from the members in the platform or anything that we might have been omitting as we are consolidating this part, I will now invite, there is another hand. Prof, I can see your hand, Prof. No?
Thank you so much. I'll be very brief, being as these are drafts and we have an opportunity to give further input into them going forward. Thank you for that opportunity. But I would also like to not only encourage participation from NGOs and other civil society organizations, but I really would like to encourage that knowledge holders are included in general, including Indigenous peoples and Indigenous peoples leadership and communities. I would appreciate that being emphasized as well. And then, sorry about the background noise. And then also further to encourage a focus, as there is a focus on forests, a focus on oceans and the ocean climate nexus, as outlined within the UN Oceans Decade Africa roadmap. Program and linking that to as well, so that it is aligning with the African desire within the UN Oceans Decade and the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration. Thank you.
Definitely, I think we need to capture that resolution, and I hope, Prof, with your drafting capacity and skill, if you can put that also to the drafting committee of this webinar, so that it can also be reflected accordingly. And I think the Secretariat will also have an opportunity to translate this document into Swahili, English, and our vernacular, as we know that we've got 4 policy provision in terms of Eastern Cape Legislature, so that whoever is reading this is in a position, because we've got countries that we are partners with in the region. So we are going to work with those countries for better translation of this CPA recommendation and resolutions. Thank you very much, ma'am. I will now invite you, Deputy Speaker of our National Assembly, to present to this important Africa Day webinar session, closing remarks on behalf of the sector. And I think if our President is able to connect again, I will request her to declare this important Africa Day session officially closed. Let me now invite you, sir, to take the podium. Okay, just before Deputy Speaker, let's invite back at the excursion video just to complete the picture of the province, whilst the Deputy Speaker is being prepared to be ushered in for closing remarks. Can the Secretariat ensure that the Deputy Speaker is ready now? Over to you, Secretariat, for the video. We are waiting for the video. Please move. Honorable members have another items this afternoon. We are going to KZN immediately after this. You are on mute. Please unmute. We can't hear anything.
Beckoning you to boundless discoveries of this place. The warmth of the African sun, a welcoming smile, where the oceans sound the call to the beginning of a beautiful day. The palpable promise of collecting priceless moments, where the legendary have given their name, and the iconic lay claim to it as home. It is the beginning of the African adventure for which you've been longing, beckoning you to boundless discoveries of this place. A place where nature conspired to give you adventure, where escape in endless seas calls out to your soul, flowing with wondrous creation and dreams come alive. Where your mind's eye could never imagine the beauty to be found in the depths of the sea, or the shores of the bay where your footsteps lead to lifelong bonds, where you cast your spoons and float in sparkling waters. The sound of the air gliding against your skin as your footsteps lead you to new trails that lead to new kingdoms, where you walk with giants in the company of royalty and capture new patterns. Where there's freedom to try and chase the wind, knowing that the dunes will catch you if you fall, leading you to rivers. A source of fuel for the inventive and imaginative transits to paths of history whose rhythm tells of an electric culture that is the story of this place. A rich heritage filled with beauty and pain, strength, adversity, and resilience. A human experience full of color and tapestry that is this place. Its new smells, taste, textures, and sounds. A rhythm that opens your heart to the spontaneity, fun, and happiness for which our new normal has left us longing can be found in this place. Where the familiar and the new, from sunrise to sunset, fill the streets with life. Heartbeats of people whose warmth of spirit shines bright like stars in a warm summer's night, with arms wide open to welcome you to this place, a place where you make memories. Nelson Mandela Bay.
Thank you very much once again, Nelson Mandela, because we're partners throughout the planning, and I think we are still going to be partners post this webinar so that we can ensure the effectiveness of the implementation of some of the deliberations and resolutions here. I'm informed that the Deputy Speaker is now connecting to deal with item number 13. Deputy Speaker, if you are here, I will see. I know you have a happy face wherever you are. I'm informed that you may be in Free State. Your office is just confirming. Can you please take the podium? But in the interim, as we are waiting, honorable members, I think we are now drawn to a close of this important program. And definitely sure I must, whilst waiting, raise our appreciation very much more, especially to our delegation that has been here, to our leaders across African countries that were invited and honored the invitation, to our esteemed excellencies, ambassador, deputy ambassadors, and consul general offices that were here. Indeed, we don't take this as this sub-branch very lightly. We are going to make our recommendations quite more stronger to the coming regional meeting, which I think is taking place in Sierra Leone, so that part of the delegation from South Africa can also have the input of this province of the Eastern Cape, the province of the legends. We are going to neatly dovetail these discussions so that they meet all the standards and the requirements of subject like this. But more importantly, our universities, Prof. Sondi, we are going to continue working with your likes and other institutions of higher learning, but we want to draw this to the attention of younger generation. We want children, kids in particular, to understand that environment is so much important for our own livelihood as humankind, and issues of oceans discussions that is now becoming much more important. The marine schools that are in the province of the Eastern Cape, collaborating with the Coastal and Marine Institute in Nelson Mandela, this is an agenda that must be made bigger, so that wherever the members of the legislature and parliament are speaking through the executive, through the members of the cabinet, we must be a mouthpiece for this bigger agenda, that tackling climate change and its effects to the environment and humankind has to be a matter of daily experience. I'm trying to make this as we are waiting for the Deputy Speaker. But if we cannot manage to get a hold of him, I think the president of the CPA sub-branch, I will invite her back if she is able to connect to declare this important Africa Day 2022 webinar session and celebration officially closed, because I know that we are still invited by other countries of Africa in Eastern Cape to go and witness food cuisines that are taking place, the garments that they are making, learning the best languages that we can manage to amass as this institution. And of course, this afternoon, we're invited by KZN on the same celebration at 3 o'clock, and we still have to take that journey to that province. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, KZN, for extending that invitation. And I think continuing celebrating this month, we stand invited by all other faculties as well as all other important institutions to ensure that we live and relive and experience and re-experience how to be an African in Africa and what kind of products and production of knowledge we can use during this period. I don't know, DS, I'm informed that you are back. Let me now hand over to you to officially conclude this session. Our target time was 12:35. We're almost at 12:31 now. Over to you, sir. I can see you, DS. You can proceed.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. My apologies. I had a bit of a problem. Let me firstly appreciate the invite to speak to the Eastern Cape Legislature and on this crucial matter of climate change. May I also observe protocol and wish you well yourself, Deputy Speaker, the Speaker herself, and the chairperson of the branch, sub-branch, Ms. Nkupani, Dr. B. Snow University of Sackville Associate Professor, NMJ Coastal and Marine Research Institute, and Mr. O.L. Mapuyani, Vice President, CPA Eastern Cape Branch and Premier of the Eastern Cape. I think it's appropriate that we do that. And the Treasury of the CPA sub-branch and Chairperson Legislative Oversight, and all honorable guests present. I hope I will improve next time in the recognition of my all the people that deserve to be specifically mentioned. But this theme that has been we've gone through is important. But allow me, Chairperson, to just briefly say that because this is Africa Day, we observe it as an ongoing struggle of the African continent to assert sovereignty over its affairs. It is an expression of the commitment to reject vestiges of colonial exploitative relations, because this is about people and about nature. And the SADC Master Plan and the Agenda 2063 and the Global Sustainable Development Goals represent our engagement with the world at large. So some of the key areas that has been identified for follow-up are critical for that reason. But we have to be cognizant of the reality that we operate in a world in which our agenda as Africans, we seek to democratize global institutions of governance, such as the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, the World Trade Organization, the Security Council, and our involvement as a country in international fora such as the Interparliamentary Union and the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and its 2 chapters of the Commonwealth, women parliamentarians, for example, and the Commonwealth women parliamentarians, as well as the network of the Commonwealth parliamentarians with disabilities, are crucial components of the work we do together. In those fora, we seek, as I suggested, that to ensure that what gets done in these institutions helps to deal with the problems we have identified, such as climate change. We generally want to appreciate the reality that we can't deal with it as an individual country, but we must operate multilaterally in forums that enables us to assert the conditions that confront us as a continent, but also working together with others to do so. It is absolutely crucial that tackling climate change and its effects to the environment and humankind broadly be located in this political environment, because without doing that, our efforts will be limited. Climate change remains a serious global threat that demands forceful leadership and a strong regional and international response. I'm aware that the United Nations Development Risk Reduction Program has crucial elements it has identified to provide assistance to us in countries and through parliaments and legislatures to ensure their implementation. This is an absolute critical area that we must look at. The adverse impact of climate change stand in harm to harm economies, threaten national security, and imperil communities and ecosystems. The experience we've just had ourselves in KZN recently, parts of the Eastern Cape, as well as Northwest, are a devastating example of what we are talking about here. So it's been raised in the discussion was absolutely crucial. Climate change is political, issue that has the potential to unseat governments as well. Of course, when we talk about putting people first, that our efforts to deal with the environmental damage, of raising awareness to take preventative measures, such as in our legislation on disaster management, that requires of us to take proactive preventative measures. It is so that people are able to preserve and conduct their lives through their livelihoods without the harm that environmental risk can often represent. It is also crucial that the most destitute and especially those who are at risk, higher risk than others in the higher echelons of our class-divided society, get priority attention. It is important that the interventions and the limited way perhaps they have been coordinated so far, that be improved. We may not have seen effective coordinated efforts in the past, but it is crucial that we require that this be done more often, more frequently, and proactively, even as we attend to the current issues and so on. And it is also crucial that we've been going through what we call the budget review recommendation reports in Parliament. And so it is important that those kind of programs through the mini plenaries that you are aware we would have undertaken this at contain elements that speak to reporting on the relationships of working together, of coordinating our activities, and of ensuring, as I said earlier, that we prioritize those who are often destitute and the first victims when things go wrong. The work the committees should entrench climate change strategies, policies, and their budgeting and track implementation, meaning that in the work we are doing, when we talk about climate sensitive budgeting, climate sensitive, climate responsive budgeting, this must be brought to real in active work that we must do from Parliament nationally, in the provincial legislatures, in municipalities, and in private business institutions, including NGOs themselves, undertaking efforts to ensure that we are able to contain the dangerous risk that climate change is now visiting upon us. There are, of course, bigger issues of the dependency because of specific conditions that we confronted in our own country. For example, and most other developing countries, that the energy methods we pursue to provide sustainable livelihoods and development being taken on board and be dealt with sensitively, so that we move as fast as we are able to in order to contain the environmental risk, but ensure that we carry along the majority of people who otherwise would be rendered challenged in an unacceptable manner. And that's the challenge I think the work you have initiated in the Eastern Cape Legislature represents. This raising of awareness around this matter is more than welcome. And thank you very much for the opportunity to have benefited from the insights that come out of this discussion today. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, our Deputy Speaker, National Assembly. Honorable members, right on that note, at 12:41, at least we are not that much bad on time. That was 11 minutes extra. I wish also to formally, at this stage, as the chairperson of the CPA sub-branch Eastern Cape, on behalf of my president and on behalf of the deputy president who is the speaker, and the executive of CPA, as well as the Deputy Speaker of this legislature, take this opportunity to formally wind down and close this important session. Hopefully that we are going to create a data bank of all the participants so that going forward we become partners to ensure that we go forward with this extraordinary platform of engaging. We hope that everything that has been deliberated here has been an eye-opener, and we are going to use it in our own planning. Deputy Minister, Deputy Speaker, officials that are present here, Secretary of the Legislature, and the entire Secretariat and the executive managers across who are preparing logistically for this platform. This is an opportunity to also say thank you very much to you. I'm informed until 2023 on the 25th of May. Thank you. You can show your faces such that at least we need that picture. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, DS. Abdul, thank you very much, Honorable Deputy.
Thank you very much, DS.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, VKP.
Thank you, DS. Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary.
Asante
sana. Bonjour, Africa. Let's go and celebrate, and we'll be responsible for our own continent. Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much for your insightful, a very impactful presentation and your guidance throughout this process. Thank you.